Tomorrow marks the 25th anniversary of the completion of the first Oslo Accords. Now, these agreements led to the formation of the Palestinian Authority as we know it today and formed the basis for future two-state negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians. But 25 years later, the legacy of Oslo remains a fiercely debated subject here in Israel. So divisive, in fact, that former Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin even paid for it with his own life. Here to reflect on Oslo is Dr. Martin Sherman, the founder and executive director of the Israel Institute for Strategic Studies. Dr. Sherman, thank you for joining us, as always.
Thank you.
So you've been against Oslo from the very beginning. Why do you think that those accords, those agreements failed?
Well, I think the jury is no longer out. I mean, when the Oslo agreements appeared on the stage in the early 1990s, there were proponents who promised benefits and opponents who warned of dangers. Quarter of a century later, none of the pledges of benefits have come true, and all the dangers which the opponents warned of have materialized. So I don't think there's any real argument about whether it succeeded or failed. In many ways, it was a very predictable and predicted failure. As you mentioned, I wrote a series of articles just before and just after the Oslo agreements, predicting exactly where it would go. And I think anyone who had an iota of intellectual integrity and a smidgen of the grasp of the principles of political science, international relations, the theory of the nation, knew it was going to fail. I think only people who were malevolent or imbecilic had any hope of it succeeding.
Mm-hmm. So for you, 25 years ago, it was a no-starter to begin with? There was nothing that even you would have suggested, hey, if you put this in, you take this out, maybe you've got a deal here?
Well, you know, for Oslo to succeed, you need the Palestinians, for some as yet to be explained reason, to morph into something that they haven't been for 100 years and show no signs of being in the foreseeable future. I mean, I simply cannot understand why anyone in their right mind would want to deploy armed militia within mortar distance of your own parliament. I just cannot understand that. I do not know. I can't think of any empirical basis for its success or any theoretical rationale for its implementation. To me, it's a total eclipse of common sense.
Well, it sounds like you're talking that there's no goodwill for the Palestinians at that time. Do you think that there was goodwill from the U.S. as a negotiator, or from Israel at the time, who was on the other side of the table?
I think there was, if you call goodwill naivety, perhaps there was. But, it was Henry Kissinger who said that Israel has no foreign policy, only domestic policy. And, I don't want to sound too conspiratorial, but I think in many ways this was an initiative by the left wing to neutralize the relevance of their right-wing political opponents. Because if Oslo had been a success, there would be no real rationale for right-wing ideology which talked about the land across the 67 lines. So in many ways, I think there's a basis for saying that if the left believed it would succeed, it was naivety, and if they didn't, it was a very cynical domestic ploy. But I think today what you're seeing is basically Oslo is still on the table. And I think this is a result of a dangerous and delusional left wing and an incompetent and impotent right wing. And because, the right wing in many ways has embraced many of Oslo's principles, despite it being vindicated in all their criticism of it initially.
Well, I just want to say that, for better or for worse, Oslo maybe is referenced now because it's the only thing on the table that seems like a concrete plan from both sides to peace. Well, so naivete or not, there's nothing wrong with hoping for a peace plan, is there?
Well, no, I don't think. Well, it's like jumping off a 20-story building and hoping you'll sprout wings. I don't think that there's any chance of coming to an amicable agreement with the Palestinians in the near future, barring really dramatic surprises. And I really think it's time to look for other alternatives, which I've been promoting for the last quarter of a century.
Well, we'll see where we are in another 25 years. Dr. Sherman, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Of course.